Business as we know it won't be the same in 5 years.
When was the last time you bought a newspaper? Exactly. Everything is going to be automated in the future.
Business as we know it will be incomprehensible to us in 2070. This is the Amplify Your Business with Matt J. Hannon podcast, where I explore the entrepreneurial landscape and have candid conversations with inspiring individuals who are crushing it in their space. Today, I'm going to dig into one topic in particular, and you might find this one a bit interesting, but we stumbled across this article. I had a look at this article by The Guardian, and it's titled, "Will Working in an Office Be a Relic of the Past in 2070?" Now, that's a long time away, 2070. Let me carry the two. I should hopefully be around. That'd be nice. Certainly my intention. I don't know how much business I'll be doing, but hopefully a lot. Technology could be amazing, and maybe I'll be doing business well into my 90s. Maybe I could even tip the scales at 100 and still be doing some form of business. That might be crochet or something else, but you never know. Anyway, so the article that I wanted to talk about today: will working in an office be a relic of the past? This article goes to say, offices, the office of the future may not even be an office as we know it. And I think that's pretty obvious. I think we can agree on that. But, have a think about, I know when I think about how we operate every day and just day on day, we kind of do it as if it's always been this way. This is how we do that, or how we do this. And the truth is, going back to quote the article, if you were to grab an office worker from the 1960s, strap them into a time travel machine and transport them forward 50 years to the workplace of today, they would feel like they're on a spaceship. Instead of like typing pools, switchboards, secretaries, taking notes in shorthand, they would find the laptops, the mobile phones, people talking to Siri, online ordering, and a whole array of different technology. So that's not that long a time, and we know that times have changed, but we still feel like when we're in the current moment, we think, it's difficult to move forward and difficult to move into new technology until it becomes somewhat of a critical mass. But I remember, and it was only about 12 years ago when I started my first company. I was doing construction work, and I had a fax machine. We certainly don't have fax machines anymore, but I had a fax machine, and whilst we were doing a lot of our communication with people on email and in other ways, I didn't really have wasn't using a smartphone to the full extent at that point in time. But a lot of the marketplace and people that are suppliers and certainly our larger clients, they wanted to send faxes. So I remember a time where I was driving out to sort of the remote ends of Perth because I was working on new land estates, new housing estates, and I'd have to drive all the way, say 40 minutes north, turn around and drive all the way 40 minutes south. And then I would have to turn back and drive into the office. And I used to do this all the time, and drive back to the office, land in, check the fax machine, and there might be one fax, there might be no faxes. But either way, I just spent the best part of 90 minutes on a round trip to the office, which is effectively the instantaneous second that you now check your email. How on earth did we do anything? And that's 12 years ago. And when we roll back to these, the way people operated in the 70s or 60s or 50s, it's amazing when you look back. And, we have this same sort of situation going on now. Fax machines were around in these times, electronic calculators and typewriters and more memory, and then the early computers. And now we've got iPads, and we're moving further and further forward, and AI is coming. And what's next? Out of 10, would you rate your business in the top 7, 8, 9, 10 in terms of using modern technologies? Or are you sort of still at a 4 or a 3 and sort of hoping that you don't ever have to change? I guess if you're close to retirement age and you're listening to this, which is probably not most of you listening, but some of you are, that I can understand why you might not want to change, but what efficiencies are in there if you were to embrace some of the future technology that we have, or even just the current technology that we have. I mean, back in the day, to use any form of software, and when I say back in the day, I'm really talking about 10 years or so, we didn't really have the ability to do a lot in the cloud, but we now do. And, most software, you might have had to spend 10, 20, 50, 300,000 on implementing some software like a high quality CRM or customer relationship management piece of software. That same thing is now $40 a month. And if you're not using one, you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table for you to be doing your highest and best work. But this article goes on to say what's next. Basically, well, there's a couple of crazy examples they threw out there, but maybe not so crazy. Does it look like an AI-run human resource department monitoring microchipped employees' every move? Or is it a bit more appealing and there's a worker or a bunch of workers sitting on a beach wearing VR goggles, bouncing a few ideas around with fellow creatives? One thing I think is for sure is that we'll probably have more flexible working arrangements and environments, and the technology will continue to take us there and be a lot smarter. I mean, as far as flexibility goes, I sat on the board of a organization called SpaceCube for about 4 years and just left the board a couple of years ago. But it's a Perth-based co-working operation that now has sort of several 100,000 square meters of co-working and sort of collaboration space and builds a community. But it started quite small in a market that is generally, in Perth, it takes a little bit of time for everything to flow through, and we do things our own way. We have heavy mining-based economy and things like this. When they first came out, it was sort of a bit unheard of, and people didn't really like to share offices, and we were very used to the average consultant getting their 100 square meter space with a little meeting room and a couple of staff, but all that money was effectively wasted. I mean, half the time you're seeing clients and doing other things, and you're kind of strapped to your office unnecessarily and spending all this money. Things like SpaceCube came along. They are very similar, if you don't know, to WeWork, and that's a sort of a global operation that's getting a lot bigger. But even in Perth, we now have sort of several thousand square meters of co-working space. WeWork hasn't arrived that I know of, or they're getting pretty close, I think, and they're planning on bringing another several thousand square meters, and that's just in our fairly small CBD, central business district. And look, if that is already happening, what does that mean for the average landowner, commercial building? What does that mean for you for running your business? Like, how much space do you truly need? What does your team need? What does it look like? I sort of learned a while ago that working from home doesn't quite work for me. I feel like I need a space, but this may be a bit old school in my thinking as well, and it might just be a comfort zone thing. I've always had my businesses in a space of sorts, but one thing I have done, at least for the last 5 years, and I'm sure there's an influence there around SpaceCubed and getting involved in co-working, but I preferred to share a space. So I'd get a head lease and find a couple of other organizations or one business that we can work with. The last, say 4 years, it's been a company called Blank Canvas Visuals, and they're a 3D rendering company based in Perth here and also in Sydney, Australia. And we find that we sort of split the office now about 50-50, and we find that it's just really enjoyable for our teams to collaborate a little bit. We don't necessarily work together very much on projects. Sometimes we do crossover with clients, but more to the point, like there's just more camaraderie and people around for the teams, and I found it a much more sort of enjoyable environment than just having, your team. It's nice for, I guess, someone in our team to go and have a chat with their people and just talk about the weather or whatever that looks like without having to worry about their own sort of version of office politics. So that might work for you, but what are you investing? Are you investing 100 grand, 20 grand, 3 million? I don't know how big your company is, but is the investment in the real estate an important for your business? Because you might find that this more fluid, flexible working operation might be looking a bit crazy when you're having a look at your competitor at the moment. But your competitor might be very close to sort of undermining all your contracts and everything that you do. They might be able to produce a quality of output that's better than yours for a cheaper price because they're not carrying heavy physical physical resources that they're required to get the job done, whereas you're still office-based and needing to do everything in your full-scale and full-sized office. I'm not saying that's not needed. I don't know your business, but I know that we probably should be in twice the size operation that we're in at the moment, twice the size place, and we found a way that we can share and enjoy and work flexibly and move around and do what we need to do without, spending the same, I guess, resource and cost. So, what does the future look like in that regard? It's, to me, and it's become more and more obvious, you won't have to move interstate and into different countries for certain employment opportunities. And what I find most fascinating is the sort of VR opportunity, that like VR goggles and the opportunity to work remotely. We use programs like Skype and Zoom all the time, and I hope that you do too. And if you don't, you should certainly give it a shot. But it's still a little clunky. It can be a little slow. There's always that 5 minutes at the start or 7 minutes at the start of a conference call where you've got two tables of people, one in one city, one in another city, and you just someone can't get their login right or the link's not working, and that stuff is still a little clunky and a little frustrating. Now, it does work effectively, but where are VR goggles and how long is that sort of thing going to take to put us all in a virtual room together? My sort of honest thought is at least a decade, at least, but who knows? I just feel like we traditionally, and when I say traditionally, I'm really talking the last 10, 15, 20 years, we all went out and we'd grab like these 100 square meter spaces and have 2 or 3 people. And I used to rent spaces like this. I remember when I was working more in property consultancy and I was raising capital and doing investments, we had this office and there was 4 of us, that were working almost independently on our own projects. And we had this 150, 200 square meter office that was costing something like $100,000, including our car bays. And there's 4 people in there. It wasn't necessary. The work could have been done from my car or at home or anywhere else. But you feel like you have to present with this office. And, modern businesses are changing that game and they're changing that landscape and they're doing things with more technology and they're showing that they're future proof. And certain clients won't like that, but other clients will respect and reward the fact that you're doing things the right way. As far as office spaces go, I don't know what the future of commercial real estate looks like in that, with that in view. I think we'll obviously always be building, as economies build, we'll need more space, but, as populations grow and these things happen, I'm not sort of predicting any sort of market things here, but what I think we'll see more of is just better utilization of space and the ability to use and share things, more in the way that we're seeing your Airbnbs and your Ubers using resource in a much more effective way, whether that's a software-based improvement or just purely, when you do rent a space, you'll share it or you'll have a syndicate like you do for some people that have a boat that they use and they just share the time and the space and they use it more effectively. I think there's definitely a space for these co-working type ventures, but I think there's a middle ground that hasn't been sort of utilized. And it's what we do here. We split an office in half effectively and we utilize what we need to. We share the meeting rooms. It allows the space to be wasted a lot less. And, the operation is far more efficient in terms of how it works day to day. Really, I think the key point in all of that is understanding the technology and utilizing what you can to improve things forward. And it might be difficult and challenging in your market if your market's not doing enough or your market is a bit slow to react. And this might be in social media, across your marketing. This might be just in general communications. This might be in project management. This might be in your manufacturing and delivery. If you're still doing things the old way, I guess you have to ask yourself, how long will that last? I guess let me know. What are you planning for the future? I'm curious to get people, DM me, send me a message, but, what are you doing to set up your business and practices, to succeed with technology as the economy goes forward? And your competitors, are out there, like they're always trying to beat you. They're always trying to beat you. I would like to continue to look to make my operation and our operation leaner. I still think we hold a footprint and we have this expectation that we sort of sit in the office in business hours, and it's just not necessary. It's not the truth. We sort of tell ourselves these lies that we need to still sort of work within this framework. And I just think the more we can break free from that, the more we can, make sure we do online meetings and other things rather than, just go back to the traditional version and the way of doing things. And I'm not saying don't meet with people. It's super important to build relationships in person. But how much of your business really needs to happen in your office space? And how much of that office space is just a burden that you're carrying and dealing with just because you feel like it, just because your ego says, hey, I've got a nice, flash, fancy office. Do you need it? Do your clients really need it? I'm sure you're telling yourself you need to present yourself in a certain way. And sometimes that's true. But do you really need it? So, what are you doing? Or let me know your thoughts around this. Have you converted your office? Are you sharing some space? Are you doing things to allow, more flexibility, fun and lifestyle for yourself and your team? Or, what is it that you're doing going forward and how do you plan to change in the next 5 years? All right, reach out to me as usual, guys. Instagram, Matt J. Hannam, Matt, MattJHanham, or hit me on YouTube for the same. We're filming these up at the moment. So, yeah, you can have a look at me just chatting away. But, check it out on YouTube if that's your preferred venue. I've got some really cool interviews coming up, but I've really also had some amazing guests in the past. And if you're looking to hear a little bit more, here's one you might enjoy. I sat down with Dino Pacella, who's a LinkedIn master, basically. He's got 30,000 plus, or he had 30,000 connections last year already when I was chatting to him. And we go through how to use LinkedIn to grow your personal brand. And it's a really powerful episode where he actually starts to dig into some of his personal life and situations as well, and what sort of propelled him forward with his business. And if you want to find that out, check me out in the usual feed, wherever you find your favorite podcast, obviously my podcast right there, but or just simply Google Amplify Your Business, Dino Pacella, Pacella. And look, next week I will be chatting on 4 books that you must read before starting a business. So please leave a review. Please share this episode with someone you think might need to hear it, or maybe someone that has an opinion about this, or, shoot me a message. And as always, I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.